The moon hung low over the palace of Marundi, its silver light casting eerie shadows across the cobblestone paths. The air was still, save for the occasional rustling of leaves as the wind whispered through the royal gardens. But inside the palace walls, a growing tension festered among the night guards. "Have you noticed, Omari?" one guard murmured to his companion, shifting uneasily on his spear. "The king sneaks out every night, always alone." Omari, a great warrior, narrowed his eyes. "Yes, he's always so serious, and he always returns before dawn, looking different." "Different how?" another guard asked, his voice hushed. Omari hesitated. "He looks shaken, disoriented, like a man who has seen something he cannot explain." The other guard answered, "Maybe he's keeping an affair." The guards had spoken in hushed tones for weeks, watching the once mighty King Baruka slip away into the darkness. None dared to question him, but tonight Omari decided he would put an end to the mystery. "Tonight, I will follow him," Omari declared, tightening his grip on his spear. "Are you mad?" his companion whispered urgently. "If the king finds out—" "Then he finds out. But I must know the truth." The other guards exchanged worried glances but said nothing. Some secrets were better left alone. But Omari had already made up his mind. Baruka moved like a shadow through the palace corridors, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he made his way past the sleeping guards. His cravings had returned, stronger than ever. The hunger gnawed at his insides, demanding to be fed. His bare feet met the damp soil as he stepped into the fields, the scent of fresh cassava filling his nostrils, not knowing he was being followed by Omari. He exhaled heavily, gripping his stomach as waves of pain rolled through him. It was happening again. He got to all fours, his limbs convulsing as a powerful force took hold of him. His eyes stretched, skin thickening into a rumble. His hooves dug into the earth as a low, guttural growl escaped his throat. Crouched behind a cluster of cassava leaves, watched in horror. His spear trembled in his hand. His breath hitched. Then he screamed. The beast whirled, its glowing eyes locking onto him. Before he could move, the monstrous figure lunged, slamming him to the ground. "No!" Omari gasped, struggling beneath its weight. Pain seared his face as sharp hooves struck him, sending him reeling into darkness. The last thing he saw before he lost consciousness was the beast's massive horns silhouetted against the moon. Hours later, Baruka, now human again, stood over Omari's motionless body. His head ached, his limbs weak. He had no clear memory of what had transpired, only flashes of movement, of fear, of hunger satiated. His heart pounded. What had he done? He knelt, his hands hesitating before lifting Omari onto his shoulder. "I must fix this," he muttered, his voice hoarse. Slipping through the gates unnoticed, he placed Omari gently by the entrance and disappeared before the sun began its ascent. Morning came with a scream. A female servant carrying a basket of fruits stumbled upon the unconscious guard. "Help! Someone come quickly!" she cried. Villagers gathered, murmurs spreading like wildfire. "It's Omari. He's been hurt." "Is he alive?" A gasp. "Yes, he's breathing." The palace native doctor was summoned. Wrapped in ceremonial robes, he inspected Omari's wounds before nodding grimly. "This is no ordinary injury. Rituals must be performed at once." When word reached Baruka that Omari had survived, his chest tightened. Fear coiled around his heart, an unfamiliar sensation for a man who had ruled with an iron fist. He rushed to the healer's chambers, his feet heavy with dread. As he stepped inside, he found Omari lying on a woven mat, his skin pale, his face marked by a deep wound. The healer muttered incantations, sprinkling sacred herbs over the guard's body. "How is he?" Baruka asked, his voice forced into calmness. The healer glanced up, his gaze unreadable. "He will live, but he has seen something unnatural, something cursed." Baruka swallowed hard. He had no recollection of the attack, but the evidence lay before him. Omari stirred, his eyes fluttering open. When he saw the king standing over him, he flinched, pain flickering across his face. "You!" Omari's voice was weak, but laced with fear. Baruka stepped back, his pulse racing. "What do you remember?" Omari hesitated. His head throbbed, memories swirling like a storm, glowing eyes, crushing weight. "The beast." "I don't know," he whispered. "It was dark. Something attacked me. I couldn't see clearly." Baruka exhaled sharply, nodding. "Rest, Omari. The palace will see that you are taken care of." Later that night, he stood alone in his chambers, staring at his reflection in the mirror. His hands trembled as he touched his face, searching for any lingering remnants of the beast. "What have I become?" he whispered to himself. His mind swirled with thoughts. He had to act before Omari spoke, before the guard could reveal the horrifying truth. But how? His reflection offered no answers, only the dark eyes of a man who was slowly losing himself. Baruka sat on a wooden stool in the dimly lit hut of the palace native doctor, sweat beading on his forehead. The strong scent of burning herbs filled the air as the elderly man, draped in animal skin and sacred beads, ground mysterious roots in a clay bowl. "You must help me." Baruka's voice was hoarse with desperation. "I cannot live like this any more." The native doctor, Baba Jukun, narrowed his ancient eyes and stirred the mixture in his bowl. He had served kings before Baruka and had seen the rise and fall of many rulers, but never had he seen a king so broken, so afraid. "You come to me seeking salvation," Baba Jukun muttered, crushing more herbs. "But salvation is earned, not begged for." Baruka's fingers dug into his thighs. "I have tried everything, sacrifices, offerings. Nothing has worked." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Baba, what must I do to be free?" The old man studied him for a moment before taking a deep breath. "The spirits are angered, Baruka. Your hands are heavy with sins that cry out for justice." Baruka's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "I have done what I had to do for this throne." Baba Jukun shook his head. "Yet here you are, running, hiding, cursed like a wild beast in the night." The silence between them was thick. Baba Jukun exhaled deeply, studying the troubled king. "Tell me, Baruka," he finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate. "Are you willing to do whatever it takes to rid yourself of this curse?" Baruka's eyes flickered with desperation. "Yes, Baba, anything. I cannot live like this any longer." The native doctor nodded, as if he had expected this answer. He leaned in, his old bones cracking with the movement. "Then listen carefully. The beast in you must be subdued, but it will not leave unless it is transferred." Baba Jukun's dark eyes gleamed. "You must offer a human sacrifice, but not just any sacrifice." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "The chosen one must resemble you in every way, in appearance, in stature. And once you have subdued him, treating him as yourself, you must bring him here. Only then can we perform the final ritual." Baruka swallowed hard, his pulse pounding in his ears. "A man that looks like me?" Baba Jukun nodded. "He must become your reflection. Only then will the spirits accept the exchange." Silence filled the room. Baruka's mind raced. The idea was madness, but so was his existence. He couldn't bear another night transforming, running into the dark like a wild beast. He clenched his fists. "I will do it," he said. Baba Jukun closed his eyes and nodded. "Then go, and return only when you have found him." The night was thick with mist when Baruka returned. The man he had brought was gagged, his hands and feet tied. But when Baba Jukun removed it, his aged face showed no surprise. The resemblance was uncanny. The man was of similar build, with the same strong jawline, the same dark eyes. His hair was a little longer, his skin slightly more weathered, but the spirits would accept him. Baba Jukun nodded approvingly. "You have done well." Baruka exhaled sharply. He had spent days searching, bribing, and scheming before finally finding the right man. A traveler, a wanderer with no ties, no family. No one would come looking for him. Baba Jukun performed the rituals, transferring the spirits to the man Baruka had brought. Finally, the native doctor picked up the clay bowl and handed it to him. "Drink." Baruka hesitated. "What is it?" "A mixture of herbs and sacred roots," Baba Jukun said. "It will cleanse your body, drive out the spirits that torment you." Baruka sniffed the thick liquid. It smelled bitter, earthy, like death itself. "Drink, King of Marundi," Baba Jukun urged, "or embrace the beast within." With a deep breath, Baruka tilted his head back and swallowed the concoction in one gulp. It burned like fire down his throat, his stomach churning violently. Baba Jukun began chanting, his voice deep, reverberating through the walls of the hut. "I break the chains of the cursed," he intoned, tossing white powder over Baruka's head. "Let the spirits of the night depart. Let the hunger of the beast be silenced." Baruka's body trembled as waves of heat surged through him. He gritted his teeth, feeling a strange lightness, as though something dark was lifting from his soul. Finally, Baba Jukun stepped back, wiping the sweat from his brow. "It is done," he said. Baruka sat there, breathing heavily, a strange calm settling over him. Could it be? Was he finally free? "Go," Baba Jukun instructed. "Tonight you will sleep in peace." Baruka rose, hope flickering in his chest. "Thank you, Baba." That night, Baruka lay in his chamber, his eyes staring at the ceiling, waiting for peace. At first, there was nothing, no hunger, no pain, just silence. Then it came, a slow burning sensation in his gut, a tightening in his limbs. His mouth watered, his body tensed. No, not again. He sat up abruptly, his breath ragged. He could feel it, the pull, the urge, the beast awakening inside him. The ritual had failed. Panic seized him. He had to get out before it took control. Throwing on his cloak, he stumbled through the dark corridors, his feet dragging against the cold stone. He had nearly reached the side gate when, "Your Majesty!" He froze. Standing there, holding a clay pot of water, was Grace. She squinted at him in the darkness. "What are you doing out here?" Baruka felt his blood go cold. Grace, not her. He turned away. "Go back inside, Grace." But Grace stepped forward, frowning. "Are you sick? Why are you sweating so much?" He clenched his fists. "Leave! Leave before I lose control." Then something in her face changed. A flicker of recognition. "You," she whispered, taking a step back. "It's you, isn't it?" Baruka's heart pounded. She shook her head, horror creeping into her eyes. You're the one, the beast. You're the one who's been terrorizing the land." She screamed, "Help! The beast!" Baruka's body convulsed. He didn't think, didn't hesitate. With a monstrous growl, he lunged. Grace's eyes widened in terror as he slammed her into the stone wall. She gasped, her body crumpling to the ground, her face twisted in pain. Baruka stumbled back, panting, his heart racing. What have I done? He had to leave. Now his vision blurred as he turned and ran straight into his wife's chamber.